What's up, guys? I'm going to show you guys how to set up a TIG machine to weld different types of metals today, different polarities. We're also going to show you how to set the torch up for the consumables. We have a number 20 water-cooled torch here. And it's a pretty common torch in our shop, very common for aluminum, but we're going to use it for an example to show you how to set the consumables up. Some of the consumables might look different for other torches, but it's the same process. First off, we're going to grab our insulator. It's this little white piece of plastic here. It slides on the front of the torch. That helps insulate this torch, keep gas from leaking out. And when we're on AC, that current can actually leak out and shock us, so that kind of helps prevent that. Got the insulator on first. Then we're going to put the collet body on there. So the collet body screws in. That's what our cup will mount to, and that's what our collet will be held in. So if you had a gas lens or a different style, they can look different. That's just a simple one for number 20. Next, we're going to put our cup on there. We have a ceramic number 5. We're going to screw that on the end. This will be a perfect setup for some aluminum. Now that we have it on there, we're going to take the actual collets. This is a 332 collet because we're using a 332 tungsten. We're just going to drop it in the end of the torch. We got our 332 tungsten with us now. We're going to feed it in through the back of the torch, push it through. Then we're going to take our tail cap. This is a long cap here, pretty common to use in the shop. We're going to screw it in. Now once we tighten this thing down, we just want to barely get it snug, and it keeps that tungsten from moving. And then you can loosen it to adjust your tungsten or take your tungsten out. You never want to just bear down and tighten this thing, you'll actually ruin that collet in there. It's made out of a really soft metal called copper. It gets hot, it's very easy to ruin it. So you just barely want to snug that. So while we're here, we'll talk about stick out. That's how far this tungsten's sticking out of the torch. So depending on what type of metal, what process you're using, depends on how far you want it stuck out. General rule is about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. But like I said, different stuff calls for different things. We'll get into that in a specific class. Now that we got our torch set up, we're going to switch to the actual machine setup so you guys know how to set this thing up. So right here we have the Lincoln Aspect 375. This is a pretty advanced machine, can do a lot of different stuff. That's why we chose it to kind of give you an overview. Some more basic machines won't have as many options as this one. First off, whenever we TIG weld, it's constant current, so we control our heat with amperage. So we're set at 130 amps. Obviously we can adjust that from 0 to 375 amps. So really broad range there. We're set on 130. Now as we start welding, this machine actually gives us a volt readout, so we can set our volts as we're welding. Not all machines do that. We got our heat set, so now we're going to switch to polarity. So on the top here we have DC, and on the bottom we have AC. So let's say we're aluminum welding, we're going to set this machine up for AC. All you do is hit that button to switch between the two. You don't have to change any lugs on the machine outside, so that's pretty nice. We're set to AC because we're going to assume we're aluminum welding. Drop down to the next is a process selector. We have impulse, lift arc, and then we have soft and crisp for stick. This machine will also stick weld. So since we're running aluminum, we want to be on impulse, but to change that, you just hit the button and it highlights which one we're using. So we're on impulse. Now we're going to drop down to the remote output. So we're going to talk about 2-step, 4-step, and then what the on means. 2-step is the typical control we use. When we talk about a remote with TIG welding, it's normally a foot pedal. You can also have a remote on the torch, but we're always going to have a foot pedal here at Drake. 2-step means whenever we apply pressure to the foot pedal, it initiates an arc. Once we let off that pedal, it extinguishes the arc. 4-step means we initiate the arc for a few seconds, we can release the pedal, and then that arc will stay established until we hit the pedal again. So say we had to make a really long weld, it would be handy to have 4-step on. You can just hit the pedal, release it, and it's going to keep the same amperage for you. Not something we would commonly use here at Drake. We want you guys to be able to feel with that pedal and be able to run a quality bead. So we're always going to run on 2-step here. Now the on option is required whenever we switch over to lift arc. We have to have it switched to on, so now whenever we touch that tungsten to metal, it's going to create an arc. So you got to have that set up. It also has to be set to on whenever we're welding with the stick processes, soft or crisp. So getting her back on impulse, 2-step. Since we're running on AC, we have some control of what that wave shape does down here on the AC wave shape. First thing we got is the frequency. So frequency means When we're welding with AC, we're switching from positive to negative energy. So the frequency is how quick we change from that. One thing you'll notice is the sound of that arc is a lot different. The higher the frequency, the quicker it's changing. It has more of a hum to it. And then the lower frequency, the less it's changing from positive to negative. It's going to sound a lot quieter. So a good general setting to start with aluminum is at 120, but now that's something that will vary depending on what you're welding. But 120 is a good starting point there. Alright, this machine's also capable of pulse welding, where it actually creates an arc and pulses that arc, just like if we were taking the foot pedal and mashing it, letting off, mashing it, letting off. We're not going to get into pulse today. When you have a pulse class, we'll get a little more into that. This machine has that option. And then we also have a balance. So what the balance does is that decides how much time we spend on the positive side of AC and how much time we spend on the negative side of AC. So, and each one of those, one is going to control your penetrating action and one's going to control your cleaning action. So depending on what we're welding, do we want more penetration or do we want more of a clean bead on what we're welding? So our balance is going to adjust back and forth between those. A good starting point for AC aluminum would be about 75. Like I said, we can adjust that either way. So now we've got our machine set up. We've got our workpiece clamp, ground clamp on the table we're going to be welding. We've got our foot pedal set up. Everything's pretty much ready besides setting up the gas flow. That'll be a little bit later on in the semester. We're going to talk about different shielding gases and how to set them up. Besides that, this thing's ready to rock and roll. So that's it for today. Thanks, guys.